Hi everyone, welcome to the video. Today I'm going to be talking a bit about BPM. I'm doing the video because I get questions about BPM, how I, approach a sample. I get questions like that on the comments. I get questions like that for people on my Patreon, people taking lessons. There's always this question around BPM. Today I decided to address that and tell you how I work with BPM, which I actually don't, but let's get into the video. My thing with BPM straight off the bat is that I couldn't care less about BPM. I don't work with BPM. I'm never interested in what the BPM is for any song. It's just not on my mind. Same as not knowing the key of the sample. I also don't care about what BPM this song is. So, and I'd have to say that the reason why that is because I don't normally look for long samples or loops or big chunks of sample. I just go for small chops, right? And when you're working with small chops, in my opinion, and from what I've been doing for 2 decades now, is that I couldn't care less about the BPM, right? It doesn't affect me in any way. I couldn't care less about it. And whatever I cut, coming from a song that's 120, coming from a song that's 60, it doesn't matter because I always cut everything up into small sections, and that is a much easier way to actually put into the grid. I've noticed that some people, even when they chop, they are looking for the BPM of the sample. I get it, right? Because if you chop everything up, the chops will still have a BPM to them. I understand that, but in my opinion, I couldn't care less because every cut and every tempo can always interact with other tempos. So there's no issue in having a cut that's 60 BPM and playing it on a 90 BPM sequence. It's just, there's no problem with that at all. I've been doing it for years. And the reason why that is because tempo interacts with tempo, and there will always be ways that 2 songs can interact together, not being from the same tempo. Just like the keys on a piano, right? You play a key and it vibrates at a certain cycle, right? It creates a harmony, it creates a note. So if you play another key, it will vibrate at a higher speed or lower speed, right? But if you play the 2 keys together, they will harmonically play together. Same thing with tempo. Tempo also can play together. Just because you take something that's 90, another that's 110, doesn't mean that they will not, in time, sync up. We can see that on many things in life, right? We've heard these things, these small things that happen on a daily basis where your clock at home is ticking at a certain rate, then an ambulance comes by and the siren is playing at another rate, but they will meet at a certain point and they will click together at a certain point. That's just because it doesn't matter what the time is, time will intersect at a certain point, right? And this is all like this crazy little concept, but it's true for chops as well. If I take a chop, a small little cut that has some dynamics, I'm not even talking about just a single chord, because a single chord, of course, you don't even need BPMs for that. It's just a chord. You can play it in any tempo, it doesn't matter. But once you have a small little cut that has some dynamic changes to it, it has some rhythm or something to it, even if it's a small cut, that cut will work, and it can work, even though maybe you think it won't. It will work. I can take a cut that has some dynamics from 100 BPM or 130 BPM song or 30 BPM song. It doesn't matter. I can take it from any sort of BPM count and put it on a 90 BPM without stretching it. You just have to figure out where in the sequence that chop will be. I mean, this is a lot of talk just to say that it's all down to how you listen to samples, right? It's all down how you try the sample in the BPM. So I can take anything and make it work in a 90 BPM beat. It's just, because it will come a space in that sequence where that sample makes sense and the rhythm makes sense. So yeah, man, let's jump a little bit to the MPC and show you how I work with my small cuts and how I can put them into a sequence. Right, let's go. So welcome to my MPC. I have a drum loop going. That's the sample. Now let's say that's the loop, all right? I'm just going to extract that. I'm actually going to create a different program for this. Track 2, new program, program edit. Put the loop in there. That's the one. Okay, let's record it in. I think this sample, if I'm not mistaken, it's around 120. It's 64 BPM actually. The entire sample, right? The whole thing, it's 62 BPM. Yeah, it's right there actually. If we go into the sample edit, you can see it. 62, 69, about 63 BPM. That's the sample BPM, right? I don't care about that at all. Just by listening to how it sounds with the drums at 86, there are points that the samples will hit. Just that alone, it works, right? I didn't even need to worry about, chopping it up or anything. And these are BPMs that are completely different. One is the guitar's at 63, the drum's at 86, right? Again, I'm just hearing how it sounds. That's all that matters. Now, if I want to get deeper, if I really want to make it hit where supposedly it needs to hit, okay, I can stretch it, right? So I'll just take the BPM sync off. Let me get to my sample, that one. I'll warp it and I'll make it go slower. Again, imagine I didn't know the BPM. I couldn't care less. I'm just stretching the audio until it fits with the drums. So I'm just using the warp here, not using the BPM sync, just using the warp percentage to stretch it until it feels good. It feels like it's on point with the drums as well, and it's looping perfectly. Great. This is one way of doing it. But now what is happening is that we're getting interference. We're getting artifacts. So the way I like to do is to chop everything up. So I have this section, that's our loop. I will chop this into 4 bits. Okay, let me just put the program into mono. So they all mute each other. And now I can just, of course, record this and it will work out much better. 1, 2. That's how I always do it. I have a sample, I chop it into small little bits, and those little bits get cut and put in place in the grid where I want those cuts to go. That's it. There's no worrying about BPM or anything at all. Now this type of chop is a bit easy, so let's go into a new sequence. All right, let's copy this to a new one. Let's just mute this track, we don't need it. I'm going to try and load up a sample that I was chopping today. All right, so I have this program from Charlie Hayden, and just put that into mono. Right, let's take this chop for example, right? right? And if we play it on the 1, it doesn't actually work that well. Right, so what do? When we can stretch it, but there are other ways of doing this. It doesn't really work that well. One of the ways that you would do this is by doing that warping, stretching, slowing it down until it kind of goes where you want it to go. Right, a bit more. And then it starts to hit. Now that section, you can even see the timings right there on the top, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, and that 1, 4 is actually right next to a hit. So you can see where the hits are going to happen, right? If you start stretching stuff up, well, check it out. 1, 2, and 1, 3, they're very close to being on the grid. Right, that's it. Or we can stretch it any other way. You can look at where the hits are going to happen. If we stretch it real nice, look, we got another hit right there, and that one's pretty close to that as well. And that hit is close to this transient right here. So just follow the numbers and you'll have a look at where everything's going to hit. Right? So that's one way of doing it. You can warp it. But the way I prefer to do it is by, again, chopping everything up. This is a small cut, but I want to chop it even further. I want to chop this section to a new, that to a new, and that to a new cut. So 3 cuts. Let me just copy this. 1, 2, 3. Okay, got the cut right there. Okay, so we divided it into 3 cuts, right? Because now there are going to be silent parts in the middle, right? Right, what happens? Well, basically now we have the function that's tail length. Before we would have to do it manually and create a loop at the end of the sample and kind of delay that in. But now we have tail length, which means we can make the sample go for a bit longer. And when you play it like that, it feels like, yeah, it doesn't work that well. It still has like this weird ending. But if you use it with the drums, sometimes it works really, really well. Those even have 2 hits. I could go and that's how I work. If I have a small chop, I chop it even further. You can warp it, do however you want. That's how I approach my cuts. And if there's a cut that necessarily needs to be chopped like this, I will chop it like this and I will use it like this. This is how I do it. And as I was mentioning, there's always places on the grid where the sample works better because time will meet time, which means there will be sections on the loop where this sample will work better than other sections of the loop. Let me delete that. Or maybe we can just move this and see how it hits if I play it right there. Right, maybe there. Right, that's pretty close. And if I now pitch this, right, right? So I just pitched it, and when I was focusing on that to hit with the actual kick. So right now that's how it plays on the grid. Right, there are certain sections that will play better than other sections, and sometimes that's how I work as well. Just see how the sample gets introduced into the sequence. Maybe this will make sense to some of you. Maybe you'll find it weird. Anyway, it's how I work. I hope you guys took something out of it, and that's it. Thank you so much for watching the video. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.